Hello, my name is Eleanor Xenophontis, and I am co-owner of Tsiakkos and Charcoal in Maida Vale. I was born in London, however my parents came to England in the 1950s. My mother is from Leonariso, from Carpasia, and my father is from Kyrenia, Agridagi in Kyrenia. They didn't know each other before they came to England. However, they were introduced to each other by proxenia, which was the traditional way of getting people together in those days for marriage. My parents came to London, I guess, for a better life. On my mother's side of the family, my grandfather came to England just after the Second World War, and he had 4 sons and a daughter. And gradually, one by one, he was bringing them all over to England. And eventually my grandmother came too. When they came over here, my uncles worked in the, 2 of them worked in the food industry, one as a waiter and the other one going on to own his own cafes in the City of London. And the other 2 became cutters, pattern cutters in the rag trade. And worked for over 20-30 years in that industry. My father came to England. He was the only one from his immediate family to come to England. He stayed with his aunt, and he wanted to be a jockey, a riding jockey, and so he pursued his passion. However, he was slightly too tall for a jockey, maybe a little bit on the heavy side, and therefore he had to pursue another career. Career is probably not the right word, but he had to make a living somehow, and he got various jobs. The 2 most distinctive ones were, one, he worked for Gamba, which was a famous ballet maker in Soho. First of all, delivering shoes, ballet shoes to the local opera houses, ballet houses. And the second job, he became a kitchen porter in a then very famous restaurant called the L'Epicure on Frith Street, which was a French restaurant. And he started as a kitchen porter, and he worked his way up. By the time he left at the age of 65, which was just over 40 years of service, he was one of the head chefs. I always had an interest in food. As a child, I'd always be helping my mother in the kitchen. I was the youngest of 3 girls, but I was the one who would be wanting to know how to make dolmades or kyoftedes, which was our favourite. At first, my mother was quite hesitant because she had a very, very small kitchen. She could stand in her kitchen and touch her sink, cooker, fridge without opening her arms. That's how small her kitchen was. So it was quite difficult to actually have someone else standing beside you. But eventually she gave in through my persistence, and I'd help her, and I'd become the taster. Make sure that she'd ask me if everything was seasoned okay, and I really enjoyed it. And that's where my passion for food came from. My sense of smell has always been very good. I have I would say, a typical Greek nose, big, and I always said I have a big nose because I can smell things better, and I love smelling things. And even to this day, if I'm buying something, if I'm cooking, I will put it to my nose and smell. And sometimes in fact most times, and this is something my mother taught me, you can tell if your food is seasoned properly by smelling it. So I know if there's enough salt, pepper, cinnamon, etc. in my dish by just having a little sniff. So I find smell very, very, very important. And you would always have the smell of bacon in my mother's house. She used to make kouluragia, bites, heliobites, and it's something that is very comforting when you smell it. Reminds me of my childhood. Also, my father worked in a French restaurant, and on many occasions as a child during school holidays, he would take me along in the morning. He'd start work at 9:30, so we'd go along to the kitchen. We'd have to walk a plank across the doorway of the l'Épicure, because you couldn't just walk through the door. You had to lower the plank, walk across it, hold your breath, walk across it, down into the kitchen. So it was all very, it was an adventure. And I'd see how they were doing things in the kitchen. Had a very distinctive smell, the kitchen, really sort of, you know, I'd never forget it actually. And then when the food, when they started to prepare the food, it was just quite an incredible thing to see as a child. All the deliveries coming through the hatch, dropped through the door, you know, to the kitchen porter. It was quite incredible, and Soho was quite an amazing place to be in then as a child in the early 70s for me. Although I really enjoyed cooking, eating, etc., I guess maybe I didn't know there wasn't the opportunities then, or the schools available for learning to cook perhaps as there are now, or started to be 20 or so years ago. So I never even considered going to chef school. I wanted to be a fashion designer, so that's what I studied. I studied fashion design. But I always had an ambition to design my dresses, evening dresses, wedding dresses, and then around the age of 40, start my own restaurant. I always wanted to do that. However, I started my own restaurant a lot sooner than I thought I would, strangely enough. I designed for 10 or so years, and then finally realised that I wanted to go into food. And that's how I got into, firstly, having my own cafe in the Camden Market, in the Stables Market. I had a 1930s tube carriage that was converted into a cafe, and I used to do a full English breakfast, doorstep sandwiches, homemade dishes that I used to make at home, and take cakes, coffees, teas. I worked that for a whole year. It was extremely tiring, 2 days work, but it was great fun. It was really good fun. But in the meantime, my partner and I, so we started to eat at a small place called Tsiakkos Charcoal, which was introduced to us by one of our friends. And he said, look, I've got to take you to a really good restaurant. They do the best kebabs. So we came along to Tsiakkos, and it was like stepping into a time warp, like your grandmother or your auntie's house. And there was this cute old lady cooking away in the kitchen, and we got chatting. She reminded me of one of my mum's cousins, and I asked her where she was from, and she was from Vassili, which was the village next to my mother's in Cyprus. And it so happened that she went to school with my mother and her siblings, and so we built up a really good relationship, and we started to come here more and more. She was getting older, she wanted to retire, and asked if we'd like to take on the restaurant, because she knew I had a cafe in Camden and I enjoyed food, and I often said to her, I'd like to have a restaurant one day. And that's how it came about. My venture at Camden ceased, which gave me the opportunity to pursue Tsiakkos. So Xen and I took this on, and here we are, 22 years later. When we took on the restaurant, a lot of the dishes that were cooked here were very, very familiar to me. It's what I grew up with, what my mother cooked. But there were a few dishes that, for example, I had never made gleftigo before, and also daramosalada or hummus. I love both of them, but I'd never made them before. And Gaderina, the previous owner, she showed me how to make hummus, and she showed me how to make daramosalada. And she also showed us how to make the gleftigo, and she made us swear that we wouldn't pass on her recipe which she'd kept a secret for all the 26 years that she'd been here before us. So I promise I've never given the recipe away. However, Xen has done a few times. But people do come back and say, I made your gleftigo, but it's not the same. So there you go. So we reduce the menu and we cook kebabs on charcoal, real charcoals, not gas-fired barbecue, which tastes so much better. We cook fish on the charcoals. We make gleftigo, which is probably our best-selling dish, and people love it and they come back for it time and time again. Moussaka, vegetarian moussaka. We make all our starters. We make all our food. We make all our starters, our hummus, our tzatziki. Xen has really perfected the hummus. Everybody loves it. It's so different to what you would be served in other places or what you buy in the supermarket. It's quite unique. It's very, 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 very good. Our potato salads, our beetroot salads, we do feta salad. Very typical Greek and Cypriot dishes, but all homemade here, which we're very proud of. Nothing is brought in from elsewhere. So it's all made daily, mainly by Xen, and cooked to order. Nothing's, preheated or whatever. It's all cooked to order, all very fresh, yummy Cypriot food. We inherited a lot of customers before when we first moved here, and some of our customers have been coming here for, well, we've been here 22 years and they've been coming here for over 22 years, which is great. And we've seen babies growing to young adults, and we've seen, people retire. It's been great. Our customer base is so varied. We have a really strong, young, trendy group from all over London. They love it here. They come here for partying. They enjoy the food. They enjoy the meze. So they can sit here all night long and have a continuous stream of dishes brought to them. And they like it. They like the simplicity, and they like the relaxed feel and atmosphere to the place. So there isn't an age group. You can't pinpoint an age group to our customer base. It's what's the word? Accommodating to everybody. In the last few years, we've had a lot more Greeks and Cypriots come in here, and actually they are very, very pleasantly surprised, because we are very traditional, and our food has remained very traditional. It hasn't changed to accommodate the taste of the country that we're in. We are serving food that you would eat at home in a Greek house, in a Cypriot house. And I think they appreciate that. And it's more authentic, we are told, than some of the places in Cyprus, for example. So they really do appreciate it. I think most people on a first visit are really pleasantly surprised. They don't know what to expect, because you walk through the door and everything there is in front of you, the kitchen is there, and it's sometimes real mayhem. But once they've sat down and they start eating and they start to relax, they really do appreciate what they found. And the funny thing is that most in the past, before the internet and TripAdvisor and what have you, people would never tell each other about us, because we're quite a small place and sometimes you can't get a table. And so we were sort of a bit of a secret, which in some ways was no good for us, because we wanted customers to come. However, it was really nice that people felt comfortable, felt cozy, and felt that they could come here and get away from everything. And often table one would come in and recognise somebody on table two, and they'd say, "Oh, I didn't know you came here." And table one would say, "Oh, I've been coming here for years." And table two would say, "So have we." So, it's really quite funny. But since the whole internet thing and TripAdvisor and what's the best restaurant in my neighbourhood and, what's the best Greek food and stuff like that, people come from all over all over the place, which is really, really nice. I think it's really important. This is what we grew up with. My mother was a very, very, and still is a very good cook, baker, chef, whatever you want to call her. It's really satisfying to pass on our food, recipes of our food that we've grown up with and eaten all our lives, and it's really satisfying to see other people enjoying it and understanding Greek food. And you know, the Mediterranean diet, the Greek diet, is one of the best diets that you can eat. You know, the fact that we use lovely olive oil, we use fresh vegetables, salads. Surprisingly enough, you know, you come into a restaurant where we're cooking kebabs and people think, oh, you know, meat. However, we have a lot of dishes that do not have meat in and are very healthy and appetizing, and we've been eating them for years and years. And as a child or a young person, I never really appreciated the goodness of some of the dishes that my mother would cook at home. And now I can't believe that I would sometimes refuse to eat something. And as a young adult coming into maturity, I guess, or a young woman, I'd try something and I think, my goodness, why didn't I try that when I was 5 years younger or 10 years younger? So, and that's, I think that's really important now, having been a mother and having 3 boys from the age of 21, 20 and 15. I cook a lot at home, and I cook lots of different types of food from many different cultures. And sometimes they'll say, oh, I'm not going to try that. And you have to try. Whatever it is, you have to try. And if you don't like it, then you can say you don't like it. Because I learned from how I was as a child, and being the youngest, perhaps I was a little bit spoiled. My mother used to unwrap my dolmades for me, and I used to eat the rice and not the leaf. How silly was that? Because the leaf is the best part, really, now. So I know what it's like to say, well, I'm not going to try that, and then try it and realise that it's something quite nice and delicious and special. So that's how I feel about food. You know, I think if you try it once and you don't like it, fine. But don't not try it and say you don't like it. Yeah, that's my philosophy on food. You have to try it before you can pass a comment. One of the most delicious dishes we used to eat here before we took on the restaurant was daramo salada. I'd never had anything so scrumptious. You know, my mother used to buy taro from the deli counter of the Greek grocery, and it was this lovely bright pink little tub, and it was grainy and lemony, and it was quite nice. But then when I tried Katerina's daramo salada, oh my goodness, it was the best thing ever. It was absolutely scrumptious, and she showed me how to make it. And it's one of, you know, people absolutely love it. They ask for it. It's very special. It's not pink. The colour is determined by the colour of the codro that you use. So daramo salada is made with smoked codro, some lemon juice, a little bit of water, some breadcrumbs, a little onion, and some sunflower oil. And you make it the same way that you make mayonnaise, the same concept. You put all your solids into a processor first, and you blitz it. So that's your codro, your onion, your bread, your little water, your little lemon juice, and a little olive oil, sunflower oil, and you combine it together. And then you start to drizzle in the sunflower oil. And when it starts to, not solidify, what's the word? When it starts to form this lovely sort of cloudy structure in your processor, you realise that it's ready. And a good test for it is to stop the processor, take a spoon, lift a piece up, and if it forms peaks, or if it falls off the spoon like a piece of whipped cream, then it's ready. It should hold its shape when you put it on a plate, and it should be light and fluffy, and you should be able to get the right amount of taste from your codro and your lemon without one overpowering the other. And that's how you make garam salada. And I never realised how simple it was. Sometimes it's very, very light pink, and sometimes it's a beautiful lobster colour. And again, it's only determined by the colour of the codro. So sometimes the codro is very, very bright orange, and sometimes it's quite pale. Very funny story quickly. When we first took on the restaurant, the first couple of weeks, a couple came in. They were maybe from the Mediterranean or from one of the Arabic countries, and the chap looked very cross. You know, he looked quite angry when he came in anyway. So, where's Gaderina? Well, she's not here anymore. This is our restaurant now. We've taken over. Welcome, have a seat. So we took him I took him to the table, and he sat down, and he said, "Oh, we'll have the meze, we'll have the meze." So I said, "Fine." So I took the starters out, his tzatziki, his hummus, his garam salada, his pita bread, and a few minutes later he stops back into the kitchen, and he holds this plate in front of him, and he said, "This isn't garam salada, it's not pink." And I said, "Oh, I'm so sorry, sir." I said, "It is garam salada. The reason it's not pink is because our codro was quite pale today." And he said, "Oh, I noticed he hadn't tried the dish because there was no, there was no sign of him dipping his bread or his fork. However, he had a very light pink blob of garam salada on his nose. So he hadn't tried it, he smelt it, and he thought it wasn't garam salada because the colour was wrong." But I was dying not to laugh because he was really cross and angry, and then felt a bit foolish when he realised it was garam salada. But he had this little spot of taro on his nose. So I let him sit down with the taro on his nose. So anyway, that's a fun story from our early days as inexperienced restaurateurs. And he did, unfortunately, him and his wife or friend or whatever, they did get up and walk out. So they never tried our food. But I was sad that he didn't, because he would have liked it, I'm sure. But the funny thing was the little blob of taro on his nose that he hadn't noticed was there. So I was trying to keep a straight face when he said, "This isn't taro, it's not pink."